Hello, everyone. How are you on this amazingly fantastic day? So many things that animals do can be put into different categories, right? And it can be tricky to figure out which category that can really go into. So, the four main groups that we're going to be talking about are memory, something that the animals do because they remembered that's where something is, and that's what they do. Instinct, which is something that an ability that animals are born with. Learned behavior, which is something that they observe from another creature, someone else. And reflex, which is something that's completely different. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. We're going to go through each category, okay? So here's the deal. There's a type of fish called salmon. Perhaps you've eaten it. Okay, salmon have a very unusual thing that they do, where when it becomes time for them to mate and have babies and lay eggs, they swim against the current. They go upstream all the way back to the beginning of the river of where they were hatched. They remember this. They remember where they were hatched, and they go all the way back. So memory is something, it's stored information. Your brain has it in a certain part of the brain that says, hey, this is an important bit of information. And even though animals have more simple brains than we do, they can still retain memories, depending upon the animal, retain certain memories of important things, and they can use those memories. For example, the salmon swimming upstream. Okay. Another example of if you are an animal that eats and forages. Now, if you're just the kind of animal that hunts for your prey can be just about anywhere, right? But if there's a certain area that has some wild berries to it, maybe some wild blueberry bushes or some wild blackberry bushes, the bear, let's say, for example, will remember that spot and they will go back to it over and over again because they remember that it's a place where they can find food. And it's always there, right? It's not gonna be like prey, which are moving all over the place. So that is an example of animals using their memory. So that's one category of animal behavior is memory. The other one is instinct, which is pretty much the opposite of memory. It's a behavior that an animal is born already knowing how to do. It is imprinted into their brain. Their little tiny brains. They already know how to do it. For example, spiders do not learn how to weave their webs. They automatically know how to do it. Okay, it is an instinct. And also is something that's been implanted on the brain of a deer is when it senses danger, it runs, right? If it sees something that it sees as a predator, it automatically knows to run away from that. It's an instinct. It just knows that's the way to protect myself. Another couple of examples of something that animals already instinctively are born with the knowledge of doing is certain birds, not all birds, certain birds flying south for the winter. They just know to do it, and they know around about the area to go. Okay, that isn't. And last, this is my favorite example, is the bird nest. Okay, if you think about it logically, birds have to be hatched in a nest that already exists. So they don't have the opportunity to watch their mama bird build the nest. They can't learn from it because it already exists when they're born. Therefore, they are born with the knowledge of already, and some of these nests are pretty complicated, by the way. They're pretty complex nests, but they know how to do it. So these are instinct examples, okay? The classic one is also a dog knowing how to swim. We know that one. Okay. Now here's another category. It's a learned behavior. It's something that they observe from another animal of their species. And they're like, oh, that's something that I can do. And that's something that I can practice over and over again and get better at. It's something that they learn. So it's not something they're born with. And so one example is certain types of chimps are good at using tools to find food. They aren't born with that knowledge. They watch other chimps do it, and they practice doing it. Another good example is a young tiger practicing hunting. Yes, they might have an instinct that they know what their prey is, but hunting is something that they have to get better at, and they have to practice, and they're not always going to get their prey. Okay, so that's another good example of learned behavior. Oh, and here's another one. This one isn't so much about from nature, but you've heard about the rats in the maze or the mice in the maze. That's experiments that people do with mice or rats and things like this. And the more that the mouse or the rats do it, they can learn from it and they can improve. Okay, that's kind of an unusual example because it's not really nature. So that is learned behavior. Now, here's the one that kind of exists outside of all the other ones. It's reflex. Okay, a reflex is something that does not involve your brain. And that sounds kind of weird to say that because Mr. Brown, I thought that all signals are going to the brain and then they go to the brain and from the brain with the spinal cord. Well, these reflexes happen so quickly that they actually exist in the spinal cord. So your brain doesn't even know that isn't even involved in the process. For example, if we were playing catch with someone and the ball gets too close to your face and you blink or you wince, that is an instinct, right? It's a reflex. I apologize. It's a reflex, right? It's something that you do you're not even in control of it. Moving your hand away from touching something hot is also something that it just happens so quickly, it doesn't even involve your brain, okay? So involuntary, reflexes are involuntary. In means not. Voluntary means, hey, who wants to volunteer for this? You're choosing to do something. So you are not choosing to blink. You are not choosing to sneeze. You are not choosing to cough. These are things that your body automatically does because it notices something's gone wrong. Okay? Quiz time. Okay, I'm going to show you a few examples, and I want you to think of what category this animal behavior is going to go under. Is it going to be memory, instinct, learned behavior, or reflex? All right, ready for number one? And I'll show all of your choices. So example number one. A dog's ear perking up when it hears a sound. Okay, we've probably noticed them do this. Would this be an example of a memory, an instinct, a learned behavior, or a reflex? Think about that for a second. And I'll say the answers later, okay? So let's see. So just pick out your answer, and we'll say the answer later. Okay, ready? Next one. Okay, I know this looks kind of gross, but this is a newborn kangaroo, believe it or not. Like, ew, I know. That's what kangaroos look like when they're born. And newborn kangaroos, right after they're born, they crawl into their mother's pouch. Okay, so what is that? Is that a memory? Is it an instinct? Is it a learned behavior? Or is it a reflex? What do you think that animal behavior would be? Okay, let's see. Okay, and example number 3. Blue jays hiding their food for a later time. Okay, what would that be? Would that be an example of a memory behavior, instinct behavior, learned behavior, or reflex? Kind of lock that answer into your brain. Now, we're not going to answer this right now. We're going to answer this in class after you watch the video, okay, and everybody's done. Then we're going to talk about what we think that those answers are, okay? Folks, have an absolutely wonderfully fantastic day, and hopefully this helped to clear things up a little bit about the differences between certain animals and what behaviors and what categories they go into. All right, folks, have a good one. See ya.